Have you ever actually tried to track your own thoughts for just, 60 seconds? It is absolute chaos. Welcome, focused learners, to today's Explainer. I'm so thrilled you're here, because today we are exploring one of the absolute most fascinating ambitions in literary history, the attempt to capture the beautiful, messy, entirely chaotic reality of the human mind. We're going to look at how two monumental books, published nearly a century apart, managed to trap the unfiltered, raw human thought process right onto a printed page.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with capturing the human mind, then look at Mrs. Dalloway as the blueprint, move into ducks and the modern overload, check out the parallels in the stream, and wrap up with their legacy and adaptations. Let's dive right in.
Section 1. Capturing the human mind. To start off, we really have to talk about the sheer audacity of what these authors are trying to achieve. I mean, think about your own brain for a second. It doesn't think in neat, perfectly structured, logical chapters. No way. It jumps from what you're having for dinner to a random memory from 10 years ago to a sudden spike of anxiety about the world, all within a span of seconds.
So the crucial point here, the literal engine powering both of the incredible novels we're analyzing today, is stream of consciousness. It's a narrative style consisting of an almost continuous list of a character's momentary thoughts, free associations, and internal dialogue. This totally blurs the lines between what is happening out in the physical world and what is happening inside the character's head. It basically allows authors to ditch traditional plot structures and focus instead on the intimate, highly subjective experience of simply being alive. Section 2. Mrs. Dalloway, the Blueprint. Let's rewind to 1925, a time when the world was reeling from the massive, unimaginable trauma of the First World War. Virginia Woolf decided to completely fracture traditional storytelling to reflect this deeply changed world. The premise seems deceptively simple, right? It's just a single day in mid-June in London, 1923. Clarissa Dalloway, a 51-year-old woman, is wandering the city running errands to prepare for a high society party she's hosting that evening. But as she moves through London, Big Ben tolls at regular half-hour intervals. And this isn't just background noise. It is a relentless, echoing reminder to the characters and to us as readers of the passing of time and the impending fate of mortality. The physical action is literally just party prep. But the real action, it's happening entirely in her mind. Through this narrative style, Clarissa is constantly time-traveling in her head. For instance, a beautiful morning in London immediately transports her back to her youth spent in the countryside at Bourton. She reflects intensely on this timeless, exquisite memory, thinking, this falling in love with women. Take Sally Seton. Her relation in the old days with Sally Seton. Had not that, after all, been love? It's such a profound moment of reflection on past choices, societal constraints, and a deep, enduring affection she felt she never truly had the option to pursue.
But here's the thing. Clarissa isn't swimming in the stream alone. Woolf masterfully weaves together a whole cast of disparate characters, completely connected by their private, existential crises rather than concrete events. We follow Septimus Warren Smith, a World War I veteran severely traumatized by shell shock. We see Peter Walsh, an old suitor of Clarissa's, grappling with his own life failures. And we meet Sir William Bradshaw, a psychiatrist, who perfectly represents the era's clinical misunderstandings of mental illness. Clarissa and Septimus, they actually never meet in the novel, but they are intrinsically linked by the way their minds process the trauma and beauty of post-war London. It's honestly a lot like walking through a crowded city today. You never know what private existential crises the people passing right by you are silently battling.
Section 3. Ducks, the Modern Overload. Now, let's jump forward 94 years to see how author Lucy Ellmann adapts this exact blueprint for the chaotic, overloaded information age we live in right now.
19,000. Think about that for a second. That truly staggering number is the exact amount of times the phrase, "the fact that," is used to connect thoughts in Elfsman's novel, Ducks, Newburyport. I mean, try saying "the fact that" 19,000 times without losing your mind. But this isn't just some weird stylistic quirk. It is the literal glue holding together a massive 1,000-page stream of consciousness.
To our setting this time, Newcomerstown, Ohio, in the year 2017. Our protagonist is an unnamed, middle-aged woman, a former history professor who quit her job to recover from cancer treatment. Now, she spends her days baking pies for local shops to shore up her family's finances. And as she bakes, she thinks and thinks. Her unremitting inner monologue is an intense coping strategy. It perfectly highlights the complete absurdity of modern existence. She's methodically baking sweet, comforting pies in her kitchen, while her brain is desperately racing to avoid dwelling on grief, her health scares, and what feels like a rapidly collapsing global environment.
And what exactly is she thinking about? Well, literally everything. The narrator's mind acts as a giant sponge for the era's cultural and political anxieties. She seamlessly blends deeply personal worries, like her family's safety, with inescapable global realities. Her thoughts race rapidly across widespread plastic and chemical pollution, the U.S. presidency of Donald Trump, the absolute horror of mass shootings, viral pandemics, and even the industrial mistreatment of livestock, particularly chickens. We are looking at a pure, unfiltered representation of how overwhelming it feels to have a modern brain permanently tethered to a 24-hour news cycle.
Section 4. Parallels in the stream. This is where it gets absolutely fascinating because it brilliantly illustrates how entirely different eras can produce the exact same human coping mechanisms.
Look at the physical scale and structure of these two books. Well, Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway clocks in at about 224 pages, taking place over a single day and smoothly shifting between the perspectives of multiple characters in London. Lucy Ellmann took this exact architecture and stretched it to its absolute limit. Duck's Newburyport is over 1,000 pages long, covers an extended period of time, and the vast majority of the entire book is constructed as one single, uninterrupted sentence.
And if you look at the thematic parallels here, they are incredibly striking. For a domestic distraction, Clarissa uses the act of hosting a high society party, while our Ohio narrator bakes pies for local shops. Looking at cultural trauma, Clarissa's world is haunted by the shell shock of World War I, while Ellmann's narrator is paralyzed by climate change and information overload. For coping mechanisms, Clarissa retreats into the beautiful recollections of her youth at Borsatin, whereas our modern baker falls into intense free associations of acronyms, classic films like The Sound of Music, and memories of her late mother. In both centuries, a mundane domestic routine is used to stave off existential dread.
But honestly, the most brilliant structural parallel, and I mean this is just pure genius, is how both authors interrupt their main domestic narratives with profound subplots dealing with immense trauma and survival. In Mrs. Dalloway, Clarissa's party planning is contrasted with the tragic mental decline of Septimus Smith, who hallucinates his dead comrade and ultimately takes his own life. In Duck's Newburyport, the massive single-sentence monologue is broken up by discrete, traditionally formatted paragraphs about an eastern mountain lioness. This omnisciently narrated subplot tracks a wild cougar desperately searching across Appalachia for her stolen cubs. Both authors use these jarring interruptions to dramatically remind us of the primal life-or-death realities existing just outside the safe, cozy domestic bubbles of our protagonists.
Section 5. Legacy and Adaptations. Finally, let's explore how these deeply internal streams of consciousness have actually rippled outward into our broader culture. It's crazy, but Woolf's working title literally became its own universe. Her original working title for Mrs. Dalloway was actually The Hours. That title was later adopted by author Michael Cunningham for his brilliant 1998 novel, which connects the lives of 3 women across different generations who are all intimately tethered to Woolf's original book. That novel was so incredibly successful it sparked a massive 2002 film starring Meryl Streep and Nicole Kidman, and even a breathtaking 2022 opera. The story simply refuses to stay in the past. From the initial publication in 1925, to Marlene Gorris's 1997 film adaptation, to Lucy Ellmann's spiritual successor winning the Goldsmiths Prize in 2019, our cultural fascination with the internal human mind hasn't faded one bit, and it continues today, culminating in the highly anticipated 2026 film Clarissa. This upcoming film is a complete, modern-day reimagining of Mrs. Dalloway, uprooting the story from 1920s London and setting it in modern-day Lagos, Nigeria. It beautifully proves that the overwhelming, universal nature of our inner thoughts absolutely transcends time and geography. Which brings us to the end of our explainer, and to a final thought for you to chew on. These novels show us that whether it's 1925 London or 2017 Ohio, the human mind is a messy, beautiful, overwhelming place. So, if a 1,000-page novel were written consisting of just one sentence capturing your stream of consciousness today, right now, what would the dominant theme be? What are you using to distract yourself, and what are you really thinking about? I hope this leaves you curious about how you process your own modern world. Thank you for learning with me today, and keep exploring.